pizza is probably one of the more fun things you can ever make. There's so much room for improvement and improvisation. You can just go crazy. I mean, how many different pizzas have you had in your life? So today I'm going to be showing you how to make a pizza crust, and then a sauce, and then some things you can put on a pizza. But please, feel free. Change up the crust or sauce however you see fit. I mean, it's pizza. It should be personal. Make it your own, however you like it. The first step is to pour 1½ cups of 110-degree water into a bowl. It's got to be warm. This is going to help activate the yeast. 2 1/4 teaspoons of active yeast. And to create the rising process, you need a sugar to eat the yeast in the warm water. And we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of brown sugar. Take a whisk and stir them together. Really make sure they mix together well. And make sure your water is 110 degrees. 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast is usually about 1 packet. Alright, now that we mix these together, you gotta let them sit for 10 minutes. And you're gonna see it foam up. You want it to foam up. So give it 10 minutes and watch for foam. Make sure when making your dough for the crust that you are in a warm environment. It's gonna help it rise a lot better. I just waited 10 minutes for this to become foamy. And if you can tell, that's pretty foamy looking. That's what you want to see. Now at this point, you got to mix in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And a teaspoon of salt. Add in your 2 1/2 cups flour. Make sure you get all the flour. It's going to be sticky because we haven't put all the flour in yet. We're going to need another cup of flour in. Okay, now that most of that has come together and the flour's with it, now we're going to knead it. Lay about a cup of flour down. According to the recipe I'm using, slightly less than a cup, but it really just depends on when the dough stops becoming sticky. You might end up using more than a cup, just depends on the atmosphere of where you're making this. Try to get out as much as you can. I mean, just like any type of cooking, you really don't want to waste. But it is kind of impossible to get every little strand that's been left in here, especially since it's so sticky and resistant. Make sure you get a lot of flour on this, because when you start turning it, it's going to want to stick to you until you knead in some of the flour. To knead this dough, you basically just turn it over on itself and push down at first. Just because it's sticky and it's difficult to work with, you don't want to go too quickly with it. Make sure you spread out the flour and don't let it stick to the counter or whatever you're kneading on. Make sure you keep putting it on the flour again. Once it starts to absorb more of the flour, you can start pushing it more. Use both hands, push out, kind of pull back. It's okay if you fling some flour. This is a messy process, but I think it's a lot of fun. Some people don't like kneading dough, so if you don't like kneading dough, get someone who does. Kind of push forward with your 2 palms. Just keep folding over itself. Basically, you continue this process, knead it for a good 8 or 10 minutes. Now that I've kneaded my dough and it's absorbed all the flour from the counter, you're going to have to put it in a bowl. I used the same bowl I actually made it, and I just cleaned it out. You're going to need a large bowl because when rising it is going to expand a lot. But before you stick it in the bowl, make sure you pour just a smidgen of olive oil in the bowl so that it doesn't stick to the bowl when rising. Take your dough, stick it in, and quickly just kind of spin it around so that it absorbs all of the olive oil so that it's not sticky. Make sure it touches, the outside of the bowl. And then you have to cover it with a damp cloth. If you have a kitchen towel that you dry your hands on a lot, use that. It needs to be a little wet. It can't be dry, it needs to be a little damp. Set it over this, and you're going to let it rise for an hour. It's important. Make sure it's in a warm spot. It'll help it rise better. The pizza sauce you should start as soon as your dough is done and starting to rise. Once you put your dough in the bowl to rise, you should start on the sauce because sauce also needs time to kind of ferment and gain its flavor. Sauce is very free form. The basics of it, if you're going to try to make your own, is if you can make your own tomato paste, definitely go for it. But otherwise, you can just buy a can of tomato paste. Or you can buy the pizza sauce itself. Doesn't really matter, however you would like to do this. Then you're going to add to it about 3/4 cup of warm water. 110 degrees or warmer, it doesn't really matter as much. Whisk together your tomato paste and your warm water. Now I am following a recipe for this, but I am going to make some changes based on flavors I like and other people like. It says to do 3 tablespoons of grated Parmesan, which is fine with me because I love Parmesan. You notice I'm not being real exact because mix that in. A teaspoon of minced garlic. Oops. So I'm just going to do a couple dashes of that. Instead of honey, I'm just going to use straight up sugar. You can mix an anchovy paste at this point if you wish. I am not. Onion powder I'm going to skip on as well. It says 1/4 teaspoon dried oregano or ground, but I prefer more than that. So I'm going to do a whole teaspoon of dried oregano. It says to do some marjoram, 1/4 teaspoon. That sounds good to me. Some dried basil. I'm going to do some sweet basil in here. I'm not trying to do too much of anything. I don't want it to be overpowering. So I'm going to do a little bit of black pepper. Mix that in. I'm going to do just a little bit of kosher salt in there. The most important thing here to use, and this will make you a good cook if you continue cooking, is get a little bit of it in a spoon. Try it. See what you think. I like it. I think it is really, really good. But if you think it's not sweet enough, make it sweeter. If you think it needs more basil, add basil. I mean, this is your sauce, do what you want. So at this point, I'm going to let this sit until the dough's ready, letting the flavors blend fully. Once you have about 10 minutes left for your dough to rise, it would be a good time to preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, after you're done with the sauce, if you want to put sausage or another meat that requires cooking on the pizza, I would cook it and then leave it on low like I just did with this sausage. Now that the dough is rised for an hour, it should look a lot bigger. First thing you need to do is punch it down. Kind of push it in on itself. And then just let it relax for a minute. With that minute, you can take your pizza pan, whatever pan you're using to cook it, and spray it lightly. This dough should be enough to make 2 pizzas, 2 medium-sized pizzas. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make 2 separate pizzas. I'm going to roll it out. Now you need to let this rise for about 10 or 15 minutes. Now that I've given time the pizza dough to rise, I'm going to put some of my sauce on it. And now some cheese. Now I'm going to put this into my oven that's been preheated to 425, and I'm going to leave it in for 10 to 15 minutes, or until the crust is golden brown or the cheese is melted. So watch for it. I'm going to check it in 8. Alright, well it's been 8 minutes, and the pizza looks good. The cheese is melted, the crust is risen, and it's a light golden brown. So I'm going to take this pizza off, let it cool, and then repeat the process again with my other pizza. I hope you try this recipe, or improvise on it as much as you want. Making homemade pizza is one of the more fun things you could ever cook. Thanks.